Sorry, go ahead.
5:35, and it's been moved to accept the minutes.
I have the date there.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of June 19th as presented. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Putney Mountain Association project support. Do we have people here for that?
Yes. I'm Emily McAdoo. I'm the president of the Putney Mountain Association, and this is Pat Shields, our board member. We're here because we have an opportunity to acquire a piece of land in the southern part of the Putney Mountain area in Putney, off Holland Hill Road. Why don't you pass this out one more time? We have some things for you to take and look at, information and a little map. It's the little pink area. It's the Hammond property for people who know that area. The owners have approached us. They would like us to acquire the property and given us a first right of refusal. We would very much like it. It does abut one of the properties that we do own, the Dime property, and also the Silvio Conte National Fish and Wildlife Refuge, which is opening its trails to the public and to the Putney Mountain Association as soon as their comprehensive plan is okayed. But that will be coming up. So that whole area in there would fall under a trail network that we would maintain for public recreation and natural habitat. We are applying for a grant from the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and the grant is due July 19th. A summary of our grant proposal is with the map if anyone wants to take a look at that at any time. So we are trying to get letters of support from pertinent parties. We have some from some residential abutters from the Silvio Conte people, the Windmill Hill Pinnacle Association, and the Dummerston Trail Network are also writing letters of support in the vision of keeping a whole ridgeline long trail. We would really like the town of Putney to give us a letter of support. We are, after all, in Putney and feel that it benefits the town and the people. I am going to turn it over to Pat Shields, who has really done all of the grant writing and has hiked that portion of the land, which I have not as of yet. She's been trained as a national park forest ranger and has observed a lot of the natural plant and wildlife there. So she'll kind of answer questions and talk about her reasons for wanting to promote the area as part of our network, and then open to any questions you have. And if any come up after we leave or after the meeting, you can contact any of us. So this is Pat Shields. Now I can say what you want to say.
Not only is it a great recreational trail along the whole 16-mile bridge, and this is going to close. We have a southern portion, which is the Dime portion on your map, and then we have two intervening properties before we get to the town forest, and then our portions going north. This is one of those two properties, which is why we're really interested in it. But even more than for the hiking trail is the fact that it's terrific wildlife habitat, and it's part of that whole north-south corridor that will allow animals to move and access even wilder living in northern Vermont. So that's really why we want to do it. It's listed for $390,000, 144 acres, and that's what we're applying to the Conservation Board. We are pretty sure that we won't get $390,000, and so there will be a fundraising thing to come. We won't know that until the end of September when we appear before the board.
And by the way, the land has been and is now in current use as far as the town taxes are concerned, and the Putney Mountain Association would continue to pay those taxes as we do on other properties we have in Putney.
Is the cell tower located on?
Yeah.
Yes,
It is.
the
There's a
cell
little
tower
tiny
is actually individually
Dot right here, and
owned
this is
within
Travis
that
and Betsy's
parcel.
lot right here. The road.
That's Betsy's in.
Yeah, and the road for that
yeah,
runs
okay.
up right, sort
I
of
was
just like
thinking that was
that.
Betsy's, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the community, the telecom people, you know, they may be worth approaching for some funding. Never can tell.
Oh, we could
You know.
post that for some information, but we can go back.
Never
and
can.
send some money.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, we'll keep that, the right of way, which will go
Yeah,
through the Grace
right.
property, and then through our through the Hammonds should we get it,
Right,
will still exist, it's part of
of
the
course,
deed.
right, but
So
never hurts to.
the cell tower property is owned separately, is that
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
it's a parcel, it's like
That's
an
it.
envelope.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this one was.
It's just like 200 by 200 feet, it's very small.
Right.
They held it.
Is this what Bennett Road is, or was? The Bennett Road, you know?
Bennett Road goes down
Yeah,
from there,
off, okay.
yes.
Right.
Off of here, yeah. Now, you cuts over towards Brookline or over toward?
Well, Bennett Road is the Brookline side of Putney Mountain Road.
It is, okay.
That's what it's
Okay.
called, Bennett Road.
There is an existing trail that runs from right opposite the kiosk.
Right, I went through
Putney
there.
Mountain through there.
Yeah, I went through there last week.
Well, that road's much more passable than it would used to be. The connecting road between Hollandale Road and there you go past Bolster's Camp, and now it's
Yeah.
like a highway through there with the Conti Reserve is on the other side of the road, the
Yeah.
east side of it. The west side of it was Dr. Wu who developed all that.
Yeah.
And that road is now really there's a really good road in between two sections of bad road.
Yeah.
The value of this
Used to be a
property
mud pit.
and wildlife is really enhanced by the fact that it's bordered by Peter May land
Right,
and
no,
Conti,
that's it.
so it makes
Yeah.
a much bigger swath than 144 acres.
Yeah,
Motion to support
oh,
it.
absolutely. I was, Steve Anderson approached me about, that there's, as a neighbor writing about this, so.
Actually, I've got one other
Marty.
question. There's a group of kids that are doing a lot of mountain biking. And I know that through part of this track, they enjoy going from Putney Mountain to Holland Hill. I guess what I'm wondering is, are these lands available for bikers, mountain bikers, or would this exclude
Right
a certain
now,
group?
we open Putney Mountains lands to hikers and skiers and snowshoes and snowmobilers
Mhm.
in winter,
Mhm.
but we haven't really opened them to mountain bikers.
Right.
Is there a reason for that?
Mountain bikers tend to tear up the trails.
Mhm.
But we could, we could revisit that in terms of, it would definitely wouldn't be open during the muddy season.
Right. Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, it is an issue with
Okay.
chewing it up. I know it was for the school forest, and that was.
Yeah.
We have to check on whether we have that discussion too because of the conservation easements which
Mm-hmm.
would be held. And I'm not sure if we have some kind of leeway. I mean, we had the leeway with the snowmobiles use winter
Mm-hmm.
is okay. But we will check on that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because I know
Mhm,
that's
yeah.
become quite a thing
Definitely.
among the elementary kids now. They're looking for areas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, it might be worth considering. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would do this because there would be no practical way to police it, but to open it to respectful mountain bikers, which, I mean,
Yeah, I know.
these guys are going to go out and they're going to pedal along and, stay on a trail and so on and so forth. And, the ones who really tear it up, I think, are the ones who go out and, want to do all sorts
they
of
want to
crazy
go
stuff.
off track and everything like that.
And I
yeah.
think with guidance
Yeah.
like yours,
I was going to say
could be
that's
reined
something to
in,
teach
but-
them too.
Exactly,
it's,
respect for the
respect,
trails,
and the more
yeah.
trails there are, the less concentrated there will be on one spot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all jump from place to place, and so
So
perhaps
the
won't
trail
be
that
as.
you're talking about is also the trail that goes through Conti, is it?
Yeah, it goes just a little bit
Conti,
of
and
that, and then it
they
cuts down kind of to the end of Holland,
Right,
yeah, Holland Hill there, by Bennett Road, I think it
Well,
was.
yeah, it's, the Conti's all to the east side of that,
Yeah,
trail.
but
Well,
just something to
Conte would be
consider.
out of our hands, and I know
Yeah.
their position is no motorized vehicles. So
Well, this isn't
Well, this is
motorized though.
mountain bikes.
He's not talking about motorized, he's talking about
Yeah,
bicycles.
this is just pedal bikes.
no, I was thinking of
No.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
No,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
No, kids on
Yeah.
pedals, yeah.
But it does, I think the thought of it conjures up a lot of different thoughts because, you know, when you start to open lands for that type of recreation, you potentially open up a can of worms with, you know, people getting hurt and, you know, how you gotta get people in there to get people out of there and,
Yeah,
you
Yep.
know, so I think that should be closely looked at.
yeah,
And our management plan, which is now in its 4th edition, opens up the lands for low impact recreation.
exactly, which it might fit into that. I mean, it would have to be managed properly.
I'm not exactly sure which side of low
Right.
impact it's on.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah, that'd be something for us to, or I'll check into some of that stuff too, with some of these groups.
If you do write a letter of support, which we're hoping you will do, it should be addressed to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board in Montpelier, but it should be sent to me because I have to make 7
Put a
copies
packet
to
together,
submit.
yeah.
And so I'll need it by Wednesday, probably by Tuesday.
Is there address? Is it on here anywhere?
You should just give,
It's right here.
Right
This
here,
one right here.
140.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
right on the, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm Steve Bain, I should have introduced myself last time. Excuse me.
that's,
Yes,
we
Josh,
interrupt each other all the time.
and we didn't introduce ourselves either.
I'm
so-
Scott Henry.
Josh
Select Board.
Laughlin.
Steve had.
Speak up, Cynthia.
Oh, Cynthia Stoddard. I'm sorry. I was still thinking about this letter.
And Laura, of course, and Brian, the head of our highway department.
All right, he'll tell you which roads you can go on.
On motorized vehicles.
You know, I mean, and just, you know, speaking of the biking, I mean, you know, and also sort of addressing that access and issues of getting to them, you know, there's a really extensive network of class 4 roads already, you know, here for, which I, you know, love to see them getting a little bit of use and, you know,
Keeps them
following,
open.
you know, and they're that modestly more accessible in the sense of an emergency type thing, and you know also they're, you know, pretty regularly, you know, outlined and whatnot,
Right,
and
right.
they're plenty adventurous for, you know, anything you want to plow up and down them. I mean that's
Yeah.
you know, the road that sort of runs along the ridge top here and then runs down the back road to Brookline. You come out
Yeah.
behind the church there, or the first one further up, you come out behind out in Athens.
Yeah, that existing trail from Putney Mountain to Dine has a really wet spot that stays wet all summer
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. Oh, it used to be a famous mud pit for people who would run vehicles through there and, you know, bury them up to the roof. You're smiling, Brian. You know anything about that?
Never been there, have you?
This
People were doing that when you were still on a bicycle.
Before that.
So I will write a letter of support on behalf of the select board.
Do we need a motion for that?
I don't
No.
think so.
Yeah,
I think
no,
as
I
long
think
as you
we're
guys
all
have
in
the consensus,
I
if
think it's a
that's
great-
okay. And I'll get it to you.
That's-
Email it to you, is that okay?
Not a bad price for that and everything else.
I'll have to sign it, I'll come pick it up.
Okay, I'll let you know when it.
Now, since you're right here, the town forest that's here is owned by the town, is
That's
that
correct.
correct? Is there a reason, has it ever been explored why, because we had this discussion recently, because we pay taxes to Brookline on that. Is there a reason that doesn't get given to Putney Mountain Association? I mean, I don't know whether that would be a reasonable thing to do, whether it's worth discussing, not worth discussing.
I think it's worth discussing. I think it was broached at one point to put a conservation easement on that land, and there was some reluctance to do it by the part of some citizens.
There was and this is probably good
Way back.
15, 20
Yes.
years ago. I'm remembering a discussion at town meeting about the town forest as distinct from the
Putney
Putney
Mountain
Mountain
Association.
Right.
Association.
And at that time, it was actually, Putney Mountain Association was really just kind of getting it went through something of a hiatus and, well, yeah, no, really, whatever, long, interest, but it was, but I'm recalling the argument, about it, just about maintaining, the options for it. But
It might be
this
worth
indicates
revisiting.
that a lot of it falls within
Yeah.
Brookline to begin with.
You said you think they talked about it at a town meeting?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna
You're gonna say
say,
maybe.
yeah, maybe.
Well, we can.
Well,
I think
we'll
that's
do.
when the ATV issue came up for one thing, because in the town forest you can do motorized
Oh.
vehicles.
Yeah,
And
okay,
if you put a conservation easement, you would no longer be able to.
good.
that might make sense.
I'll start looking into it.
Okay,
Thanks very much.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Meeting House Lane and Pierce Road.
So I put this on the agenda because during the last storm, whenever last Wednesday or whenever it was, last storm, it's every day, but the one where we had some
The one that we're
more
continually
significant damage.
in the middle of.
Meeting House Lane and Pierce Road had significant damage. And I know that this has been an ongoing discussion between Steve and the town and us, especially with the Pierce Road end. And it was difficult for me to make a decision when I was called about it because it is a it's on our map as a legal town trail. It's not a private road, it does belong to the town. And I don't know if you guys got a chance to go out there, no?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I did. I went
And I need some guidance, we need to kind of clear up this road.
What is our, strictly as defined as a town trail, what is our responsibility to maintain it, if any?
Well, hold on and I'll tell you exactly what the.
I would suggest that may be some strong language
Well, let's just,
contrary to the way that.
but let's pretend we're not even talking about Pierce Road
well,
at this point, we're
Yeah,
talking
no,
about a
I'm
legal town
I'm talking
trail.
about the legal definition of a town trail
Yeah.
and what that means to
Yeah.
us as a town. And then we,
Title 19.
Yeah, legal town trail in Vermont state statute, trails shall not be considered highways and the town shall not be responsible for any maintenance, including culverts and bridges. That's out of Title 19. So we do not have to maintain.
and it's a town trail from where to where?
On the map, it shows from the top of from Route 5 down to
Where it comes out.
where it yeah.
Yeah. So it really is,
Well, yeah.
technically it's a town trail
There's a section
all
of
the way
Pierce
along.
Road from East Putney up a little, if you look at the map, up a little bit, that is considered class 4 on the map.
Okay.
I mean, not class 4, class 3.
Yep.
So there is a small section from East Putney up that we do maintain.
That runs by Pierce's Hall there.
Yes.
That's the class 4 road. And
No,
then it
class,
becomes-
No, she's,
no. What?
she's speaking of a section of it that's.
A
class
section of
3.
Pierce Road that is class 3.
Oh, it is class 3, correct.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay, right.
So you all are also residents of one end or the other?
We live on Chris Angel, Lori Angel, we live at the top.
On Meeting House Road per se, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, at this point right now, the section on Meeting House, there was a section that we did go out there. I had Brian go out there, They spent half an hour, 45 minutes, put some gravel in, just because my main concern on that day was making sure anybody that lived in a house that was continually occupying the house, that we had access emergency-wise. It's not a private road, it is our road, so I was concerned about that. Knowing that the other end of the road, which is the section that Steve's property is on, the Pierce Road section that's not maintained and has a significant washout, knowing that there was nobody living in that house right now, and it was a larger project, I didn't make any decisions on that, and that's where we are right now. It's really, in order to help the citizens that live on those roads, I need some direction as to what it is that I can do when something like this happens, if anything. If we're going to do any type of maintenance, or if it's strictly up to the residents of those roads at this point.
Now, it's my understanding that when houses were built there was some agreement between people building houses there and whoever made an agreement with them at that time, that the town would not be responsible for maintenance. Does that mean anything to any of you? And was there such an agreement made, as far as you know?
We don't know, because we're not the original owners of the property. So when we bought it with the understanding that it was a trail that, we would have to maintain our way into our property. So.
The day that really big washout, the water came from the woods, from Route 5, the west, the west. The west side. It came out of the woods, and from the where Bill and Bruce lived, there, the first culvert going down, from below that, it was coming out of the woods and going down Pierce Road. From there, it was just coming out of the woods. It was just
It's really,
pouring
it's
out.
a watershed area on certain maps.
So,
Goes along with what you're saying.
so there's kind of, I guess in sitting in my chair and doing the work that I do, I'm dealing with the same area of town, but it's really two separate roads at this point, even though there is some issues with drainage, and there is clearly some language in the decision that was made in the zoning at the time that the houses on Meeting House Lane were being permitted, talking about who's responsible for that maintenance. It's not so clear in the permitting on the Pierce Road section where the house is that Steve owns.
But there are actually permits for all of these
Yes.
houses? Okay.
So,
And
I just want to make sure that Bill and Bruce, who live on Meeting House Lane, who couldn't be here tonight, they have a concern with the water that seems to be coming off of maybe some work that was done off of South Pine Banks Road, at the end of Pine Banks Road, and I want to make sure that concern is heard, because I have contacted John Alexander at V-Trans to have him come out sometime next week to address, because it wasn't work that we did, I'm assuming, it wouldn't have been work that we did, so that he can be part of that. Yeah, so that he can be part of that conversation, because there is a concern that maybe something that was done there has caused more water to come in a direction that, or I don't know. I mean,
It's possible. I mean, we've never seen as much water
Yeah.
out of the woods like that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to do in this section of the agenda is address a time that everybody's available to come for that meeting, to talk about that issue. And then, so that's one part of this. The second part is then a decision at some point be made, what is going to happen with Meeting House Lane, Pierce Road, who's responsible for maintenance, that whole discussion. So I don't know how you want to kind of parse that out, if you want to look at the calendar and set up the meeting time first and get that over with, and then talk about do you guys have time during the day? Wednesday,
I will
Thursday,
be
Friday?
flexible.
I'm in Dummerston, so I can get here pretty easily.
John said that he could meet us 17th, 18th, and 19th, that's Wednesday, Thursday. He said any of those days work for him. So, I know that Bruce and, I can't remember the other guy's name, they're out of town until Monday. So, maybe Friday next week?
Friday,
Is Friday
I'm
good?
getting back in on the 18th, so
Okay,
it would be tough to make
Friday
the
at
18th.
1? 2?
Friday at 1 sounds great.
One.
Okay. Can you guys be available for that?
And
Yeah.
where are we meeting?
Too, I just wanna say something about people, it's gonna, I think I talked to you earlier on about the grill.
The trash.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we pick up trash down through there all the time, somebody dumped a grill down there. It's between, your name Steve, and Bill and Bruce's, down and through there, they find that.
I think it found a home, from Pierce's Hall up that way somehow, is my suspicion.
Well, I don't know
I did notice it.
Yeah. Bruce and he told me about the trash, and you had talked to me about it, and Melissa's
Yeah.
coming in tomorrow. Her and I are having a talk about other trash locations and how we can start policing that. So I do have that discussion coming up too. I mean, I have been called about the trash issue out there, and I mean, I don't know what to do other than try to get maybe Melissa to do a little bit of patrolling, and maybe people will see her there and not, they'll go somewhere else, but
Yeah, it's true, I know a lot of it's the state, those turnarounds, they have those turnouts
Yeah.
right there. I mean, that place is terrible.
yeah.
Lot of trash there.
So we can look at that too when we're up there,
Yeah,
just
the state
as
should
an
just
aside.
get
There's,
rid of those.
well, there's a lot of, I think that, we need to take a look at, some statutory language, and I'm far from convinced that either one of those roads actually meet the criteria that's laid out in the statutes calling them trails. And I don't think that should just be a given. I think there needs to be a conversation.
Well, most roads become a trail as a result of action by the town.
Excuse me?
But most roads end up as a trail by an action of the town. In
Yeah,
other words,
I understand
right, that
I've
we,
been involved
you
in
know,
that some. And that's where my concern really grows out of, is from, I've been around for quite a while and have knowledge about a lot of these things those roads in particular, that I don't believe anybody left alive other than myself has knowledge of, personal first-hand knowledge of. But backing up a little bit to the statutes and stuff, I think that there needs to be a conversation that starts at the beginning. I feel like this conversation is beginning somewhere in the middle, and I think we need to go back to the beginning and start with statutory language and what it is that we actually do have there as a town. And I'm not convinced it's a trail by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's more along the lines of a class 3 road, but we can discuss that some other time.
Do we have any sense of when it was defined as a trail?
The hearing, the decision was made by the select board back in 1955.
That it was a trail? It was given up as a
When
road? Or it
When I
was-
look at the map prior to that, it was called an untraveled road, which probably in today's terms would be a class 4.
Class
I don't
4,
know.
yeah.
And
I
then,
haven't
Steve, hold on a second.
Okay.
And then in 1955, there was a hearing and some notices sent out, and that was when a portion of that road was designated
As a trail.
as a trail. So that's the time frame that I know of.
And that was voted on by the select board at the
Yes.
time, as far as you know? Okay.
There were notices sent out to abutters. That part of it, I'm still
and simply,
kind of doing what you're talking about, is going back to the
Yeah,
beginning.
I'd like to see.
I mean, I'm
I'd
trying-
like to see the papers.
Yes, and that's what I've been working on
I'm
for, I
sure.
mean,
simply
yeah.
to clarify that the difference between a class 4 road and a trail is that you could continue to operate motor vehicles on a Class 4 road, but a trail is closed to
Well, I don't,
vehicular traffic. I believe that's was the definition difference between them.
I don't, yeah, I
You know, that
would
became,
have to.
in other words, it was a pathway. You know,
Yeah, and then I don't know what led to the decision of allowing development on a legal trail.
right.
I mean, that's the piece
That's
in my mind
the
that,
piece of confusion that you know, between the difference between a Class 4 road and a trail, like the Allen Road, just below where I live, is a Class 4 road, and it's, you know, not maintained by the town, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, it is allowed for vehicular traffic, and there's, you know, sufficient that a fire truck can get in there, even if it's, you know, it's not ideal, but at least where there's, you know, habited places, it can get in there. But a trail, I'm trying to think, where in Putney something was something that's designated a trail is the Jones Road still a Class 4 road, Joy Road, you know?
I don't know if that's a trail.
I think that's still a Class 4 road, even though that's totally gone. Yeah, no, I mean, that was totally passable, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's gone.
So, how far is it from the traveled end of Meeting House Lane to the travelable end of Pierce Road?
I don't know without measuring it. If
Ballpark?
I had to guess, let's go 1,500 feet maybe,
Yeah, I was gonna
Quarter
say
mile, something like that.
something like that.
500 yards.
I mean, would there be any advantage to us of opening up between the two or not?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay, so as far as plowing, do we plow Meeting House Lane or not?
No.
Who does? Eric?
We do.
You do?
I plow myself in and out, and Bill and Bruce hire somebody to plow.
The rest of the way down.
So,
Okay.
There's been a lot of different things that have gone on over the years.
yeah.
Sure.
So the other, there is a bigger question we need to answer, which is the future of these roads, obviously.
Right.
But my immediate question too is gaining access to the property that does have a house on it, which is Steve's house. There's a serious issue, and there was a washout, and you know, when I made the decision to do something up at Meeting House, I did it because there were people there, but I still feel like that's a legal trail. I made that decision. I do feel like there is something we should do to at least get the access, and that's up to you guys. I mean, it's a more significant project, but
Let me just pose the question, I guess, to you as well, Steve. That the house is pretty much right on East Putney Brook Road there, isn't it? I mean, it's off. How many feet off the road is the house?
Which are
The white, isn't this the White House
No.
that's right next to? Oh, actually, okay,
no,
wrong house. I thought that was.
How far-
That's part of the.
that's part of the same property,
But
right?
the house in question is further up
Pierce.
the lane.
It really, in my mind, it goes from Route 5 down to Falls Road is the area that we're discussing, or at least that's what I'm here to talk about.
So when you come up from the bottom side, from the East Putney Falls Road side, and you start to go up Pierce Road, there's, I believe it's a red house on the right-hand side that looks like it's apartments. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And from what I saw, it looks
Presently owned by the Diamond Stones.
okay. It looks to me like the washout is very significant, starting, 40, 50 feet
In
past that.
general area, yeah, 'cause
Roughly how far from there up to where your house is? Or where your driveway is?
well, it's a good football field's length anyways.
So, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And Cynthia said you thought it would be ballpark a day's work?
At least.
And how much material?
Well, I mean, you could go in there and just rough it in, and it would be roughed in without any material. But to make it back to kind of what it was,
Right.
it would
Well, and I think that that's a really valid point, is that it was something at one point, and it's been allowed to deteriorate over the decades, and I'm not sure that, well, that was the best cause of action, and I think that perhaps the town was a little lax in their responsibility to maintain what it was that was there. That road has dropped 2 feet anyways, over the last 40 or so years.
I do want to just say something in the defense of the town in the way that, because you do bring that up to me a lot, and there has been conversations over the years with you asking the town to be able to maintain that road. So I don't know what you've done for me. I mean, you asked permission of the town to do that back in 1991. And I don't know.
I think it was actually 1990, but not everything got written down or whatever.
Well, the letter I gave you was 1991. Okay.
But there were a lot of conversations.
So there, I mean, in defense of the town of him saying that we haven't maintained it to a certain level, there was an understanding, whether it was completely accurate or not, that the maintenance was going to be done by Stephen. So, I just want to make sure that we put that out there, that it wasn't like a neglectful situation on our part that we just didn't go do anything. There was a.
Well, the thing of it is, Cynthia, is that you know, the town may want to do what they want to do and stuff, but and they have done and haven't done whatever. But the fact of the matter is that there's a higher authority than the town and the select board and the town manager and all the rest of that. These things are spelled out in statutes.
But that's why I started with the question of if it's defined as a trail, which it sounds like it probably legally was defined as by decision by the select board back in I mean, if people were properly notified, etc., you know, once that decision is made, it holds until that decision is changed. So if it's defined on the town map, then the state honors that decision as long as it was legally reached. You know, one could argue whether it was legally reached, but if it is in fact a trail, then we are not legally obliged to uphold it. Is that the position we're going to stay with? I don't know. That's open for discussion. But I think that higher force that you're talking about statutorily, we're probably in the right, would be my guess. Because it sounds like if we can, I mean, if you can go back to records that were done in 1955 and reasonably accurately discern that the proper steps were taken to define it as a trail, I think it would be a tough argument to say that it's not a trail. I could be wrong, but that would be where I would be coming from.
Right, and when he said, I'm going right back to the beginning of all this, and that's what I've been doing for a few days, is kind of digging through records and because we want it right. I mean, it's not something that, and I don't want to revisit this every time it rains.
Well,
I want to be able, and I want to be able to say when you call, this is what you have to do, you know, and you guys as owners, you need to know if something happens, what your responsibility is, what ours is. So, although we want to, I am going back to the beginning. So, you know, but I think the more immediate thing is do we do something now to get him up, to make sure that that house is accessible to him, fire, whatever, we need to get up there. And or do we want to wait until we go through all of this, we have this meeting with the state, and then clearly just define what it is? Do we want to reclassify that road, like you said? I don't know.
He's going to be fixing a lot of driveways.
So that's the problem for us, is exactly what Scott's pointing out, is that if we decide to fix it for you, for all practical purposes, if it is in fact a trail, we're going out on a limb to fix something that we're not required to. You know, who then comes to us and says, hey, you guys need to come and fix this for us? And you know, it's a precedent setting thing, and we have to be careful about that.
I understand,
you know?
and in fact, it may or may not be a precedent setting thing.
Right.
So it may be that you can say, well, we did this for this reason, and it doesn't set a precedent.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's true.
Which would be probably somewhere around where my position would be.
Yeah.
So
Well-
if we wanna fix our road, we have to do something to our roadway. I mean, it's, of course it's passable, it's okay. It doesn't affect us that much, cause where we are and what we had done to the road anyways before. So it doesn't really affect that part of the road, but we want, Fitzpatrick's to come back in and do what they did before, crown the road and ditch it on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need permission from the select board to do any improvements to our end of the road?
Well,
You know, it might be handy as a courtesy, maybe to speak to the road
I think it does.
commissioner as
I think that,
in that,
the answer is
you know,
yes.
he might point out something to say, you know, if you have the work done so that it does this, you'll have a happier result, kind of thing, you know, as opposed to just,
I think,
you know.
in addition to that, it would certainly make sense to have this conversation with John Alexander, who's the Agency of Transportation guy who deals with this kind of stuff. Because if in fact there is impact from Route 5, for example, you know, he may say, you know what, you really ought to crown it this way as opposed to crowning it that way. I have no idea.
Right.
But, you know, if the state takes any responsibility for what happened, then they're going to have some input into that. So I think it would be probably worthwhile waiting to hear what he has to say about it.
But I don't think there's any specific permits involved in upgrading your driveway,
Well, it's,
unless you're cutting a new driveway.
it's not their
Well, it's not
driveway.
really our-
Right.
Well, right, you're not your driveway,
Oh.
your access road, right, right, your driveway is off of that,
You know,
right.
you know, it's problematic, you know, there's a lot more water coming down than we've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, the road itself, you know, is really not built up high enough. So water drains off to the sides and the ditch is, you know, really not ditched properly.
Yeah.
And then the culverts that Bill and Bruce put in down below apparently aren't big enough to handle the flow anymore. You know,
Well,
so
this year,
Now that,
Well,
Right.
and that's,
they got washed out.
right,
that road
and that's
was
their,
improved when those
Yes.
houses were built, because that used to just be a, you know, little cut-off
Yeah.
trail off the side of the road there.
Part of the problem with residing on that, you know, stretch of road or whatever you want, however you want to define it, or whatever you want to call it, is that for those of us who live there, I think we do have a responsibility if we're going to do anything to come before the board. But it's a difficult thing to do when you're in the middle of a mess, you know, and you're
Right.
and you're trying to fix it. You
Yeah.
got to get out and chase down the, you know, you guys
Yeah.
and come to all these.
Jump through the hoops that need to be jumped through.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's. I think I can see some fairly, you know, easy answers to the problems. Really, that I think likely are not precedent setting. I've spent some time with my nose in the statutes, and in fact, something I was against that happened was that was a hamlet, and it's a rural residential now. And when you read the definition of a rural residential, these things like making that a class 3 road and having it used year round and stuff seem to be encouraged by the plain meaning of the language that was chosen, which is assumed to be chosen advisedly. You know?
Right.
It seems that there could make a pretty strong argument that I think that the Supreme Court would likely buy for having that be a class 3 road that is taken care of year round, and I'm not talking about taking care of my driveway. I'm just talking
Right.
about the road.
The road,
I
right.
take care of my own driveway. I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with that. It's the road from Route 5 down to Falls Road is all that I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
all that I'm thinking about when I'm broaching the subject.
And how many, there are the 2 residences down on the,
There's 6.
60, including on their end of it.
There, yeah.
So there's 3 on your end and 3 on your end, basically, is that
One,
right?
2, 3,
2 at the top?
4, 5, 6, yeah. Which you know really qualifies, I think, from some of what I've seen over the years as being a patch of road that you would for a number of reasons, you know, look at it as a class 3 road, which you know probably isn't appropriate to get into now, but at some point I think we need to
Right, I mean, that's sort of a
take a look at these
property owner's issue along those roads is, you know, the choice, you know, you can bring the road up to the town standards and
Yeah,
the town
exactly.
will take up the road again.
I mean, that's
and
basically what
that's-
happened with Warden Road, isn't
Well,
it?
the thing of it is, though, is when you have things like Irene
No, I mean,
come
it's
through
just-
and, you know, 2 feet of literally 2 feet of road
Right.
goes, and then, you know, I am out there and I see my road being loaded into town trucks with town equipment, with town guys, and being shipped off to some other part of town to fix some other thing. Why should I have to buy what I already bought and own? It doesn't seem American to me. You know.
It doesn't seem to me that if it was a town road before, it didn't seem to me that it was bought by anybody. If the
Well,
town-
I've got slips.
town had it there before.
I bought plenty of material and put it on there, and I can show I'd be glad to show you. And but I hear what you're saying. You know, there's some validity to that, but I don't think that I would give that great weight.
So question number 1 for me
What do we do
is
now?
what are we going?
Right.
Are we going to do anything now about the trying to just get that section passable to get to where Steve's house is? Then move forward with the bigger question of what we need to lay out at some point, what the responsibilities of us, what the responsibilities of the homeowners are,
Right.
and then at that point, the homeowners can make that choice
If they
of
wanna
what
upgrade,
is our
right.
next step.
Yeah.
If that's a legal step for them, that's fine. If it's I want to bring it up to spec and have the town take it over, that's fine. Whatever that is, there's got to be a sequence of events that happens right now. I mean, I'm concerned with going in there right now and doing anything because I suppose it's probably going to rain for the next
Yeah.
5 months.
At least next 500 years. Yeah, you're
But,
right. No,
you know,
I mean, you brought up Warden Road. I mean, in effect, there is a precedent for
Yes.
residents on a non-passable road section creating a special tax district and, in effect, repairing the road and paying the town back over a period
over
of time in property taxes and creating a fully maintained road system
was
through
that
there.
a
Or Class
private
B.
road before? Or
Yeah,
It
I
was-
think that's
I
a
don't
little
know.
different because
I
that
don't
was
know.
the guy who bought 500 acres and came in with the, you know,
Right,
notion of
I'm-
developing it, and I'm not sure.
But
that
I'm
he
sort of
was not
offering it
gonna
as,
all-
as, you know, as something of a precedent, you know, that exists as a way of financing it and getting the work effectively done. Because if you're trying to herd, you know, 6, you know, people together, you know, if 4 people want to do it, are the other 2 people going to simply reap the benefits of the 4 people spending the money to fix the road? You know, and that's a difficult situation, you know, in any
I
kind
hear
of.
what you're saying.
Right.
I don't think that they're all that comparable, actually, when you look at the history of it. I mean, that road was part of the trail stage network, you know, when this town was, you
Sure.
know, in its inception.
There's many a road that was a well-traveled road 200 years ago or 150 years ago and has passed out of use for one reason or another.
Have any sense of whether the damage done to the lower part, to Pierce Road, is a result of anything that happened up on Route 5? I mean, I'm just wondering, you know, it's obviously an exceptional year,
Yeah.
but is there any change that was made?
Well, the idea of a road is to get water off the edge, get it to a culvert, get it under the road so it doesn't wash the road out. The state did some work, and I wouldn't say it did. More than likely, that culvert's doing just what it's done since it got put in there.
Right.
It's just after it comes out of that culvert. I mean, water runs downhill, and all it takes is a few sticks to change its direction a little bit.
Right.
And so I'm almost positive that the state work probably didn't have anything to do with it. It might have changed the velocity of it coming through the culvert a little bit because it's more of a straight shot and a clean ditch.
Right. But volume-wise, it's
But
not
it's-
a bigger catchment area
I
or
mean-
anything like that.
I
You
mean,
wouldn't assume so.
Volume-wise, I know they didn't change the culvert there, so
Right.
it's not going to take any more.
If I could just add something here, though, it's a fact that with the weather pattern changes that have occurred over the last decade or so, that it's been so significant that it is actually, for all of New England, the underground water aquifers have risen
Right.
noticeably, and I can't see any reason to believe that that is going to be a changing trend.
No.
It looks like that is going to be the trend for who knows how many decades to come.
Right.
And I think we need to have that be part of our thinking in the long range.
Right, which is part of the reason I'm asking that question. I mean, the other thing that brings to mind then is, you know, the lower part of this trail that we're talking about, you know, ultimately going to be a stream bed for all practical purposes. Because if that's the case, then are we fighting a losing battle? I just, you know, I don't know. I think we have to think about, you know, if we're going to repair a road that is defined as a trail, and we're going to be back there in, you know, a year or 2 years or whenever the next major washout occurs, doing the same thing because it's now the funnel for a large dumping area, including, you know, Route 5, then we got to look at it pretty differently than if we're just going to throw some material at it and call it good for the time being. So, and I think
I agree with your thinking.
I think you're right that, you know, this is not going to change probably anytime soon. So, do you have a need? I understand the house is unoccupied at this time. Is that correct?
Well, that's part of that is I'm waiting on the town. That's why I'm here, and that's, you know, part of the conversation that I'm interested in being involved in.
So you're looking for access to your house.
I believe that that's a class 3 road and should be maintained as such, and that if it's done and it's done properly, and I'm willing to take more than my share of water off of that road, that we can do something that is really not very complicated. Certainly, you know, gravel and top dressing it and everything, there's certainly an expense in it, and running equipment and paying guys and all the rest of it. But I think that it can be done really in a way that is of minimal cost to the town with a maximum kind of return in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you. It's because it's gonna be.
Well, you're putting, in effect, putting
That's
the
not-
horse,
if it's not-
putting the horse before the cart with this. The being that the obligation, because you currently own the property on a town trail that has been legally set as that you know you built on that property with the knowledge that it was a trail and not a class 4 road or a class 3 road, and the expectation for it to be picked up by the town and maintained as a class 3 road, which is the definition of a class 3 road, is a maintained gravel road, certain width, etc.
Well, the thing.
That it's the obligation, your obligation, to bring it up to that standard for the town by statute to take over the maintenance of the road again.
At that time, it was.
Expecting the town to bring it up to a class 3.
At that time, it was at the standard.
Well,
And it's deteriorated
the road was much wider at that time than it is now? Because that's
the height
the width of that
the
is,
roadbed itself was,
it's not a height of the
dropped
roadbed,
50
it's
feet.
the width of the,
That and grade.
it's the grade as well. But aren't there, but it's really, well, yeah, the grade too, but width as well
Yeah.
is not an issue for,
Do you,
I can remember when his granddad used to, plow with a dozer to get over to Cassidy Hill to tap out the trees. I mean, things have changed.
they certainly, unfortunately they do. Well,
I guess the easiest way for him to gain access to his house would just be to fix the road from up top. He could just come in from up top and right into his house. And then we could kind of get the whole hill right out of the equation. He would have to come around Route 5 and come down through the top, but it's fairly, there's not much of a grade there.
It's in the wintertime anyway, the house and stuff, so.
I don't know what the process is of deciding to change from a trail to a class 3 and whether that's, if that's something you think the town should consider, I'm guessing that if you had X number of signatures or something, we would be quote unquote required to consider that. I don't know. I'm not sure what that process is, but we should maybe find out what the legal process is for considering change from a trail to a class 3, and if that's something that, whether that goes to town meeting. I don't know how that works, but
I think it's wise to look at it from the perspective that you're speaking, or that I believe that you are.
I'm just wondering what the steps are, and if because since, as far as we can tell, it's currently defined as a trail, for us to say let's bring it up to a class 3 road status doesn't make sense.
Well, I would want to see first that it indeed is.
Well, it
legally
appears that that's the case. That and we don't
Still in the
know
research phase.
exactly. So
It is a very,
I haven't been down here bugging you.
Maybe a
I figured
little.
that's what you do.
Well,
I want you
okay.
to remember I'm alive.
at a minimum, we've
Just pneumonia.
at a minimum we've established that in 1955 the town
had this
put it up
discussion.
for a class 4 road.
there was a portion of
Only a portion.
right.
Okay.
So that's the question in my
So
mind
there's
right
one
now
lack
is
of
what
definition
is
is
the
the
portion?
Portion, okay, yep,
I
that's,
I
yes.
believe I know what it is, but I want to see what you say.
Okay.
that's.
Where's Laura
Our
Heller when you need her?
our town map clearly thinks the portion is from where we're stopping now up to Route 5. So where we're
The whole
yeah.
top part of it.
If you look at our town road map, it clearly starts like at the corner of this side of his property all the way out. So that's the but I'm in the
Well, but
research
the-
phase.
Let me just say though, but the problem that I have with that is that, really, we don't have Pinkerton guards, watching the safe and what goes on in there.
I don't, let's not,
And all
Stephen.
all a person has to do is just take a pencil and go like
I'm not
that,
talking-
and then
no.
all of a sudden everybody, thinks that that's what it is.
No,
and-
that's not the map. No,
and-
I'm gonna stop you because that's not fair. I don't want you
I'm
to.
not saying that anybody's.
Yes, you are because you said it.
I've seen
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
coming and asking a favor.
I'm
seen things.
All right.
I've seen
Well,
things.
All right.
Right,
That's
but we
fine,
but we
it's
have no
it's
reason
not
we
gonna
have no
help to
reason
do that right
and we
now.
have no reason to believe that that's the
No,
case
no.
in this situation. I think that what we
And
need
I'm
to
not
do.
accusing anybody of anything.
Okay. I think we should have the meeting with John Alexander. I think that we should see what the state has to say with it, if anything. They may not have anything to say. I think that we allow Cynthia to complete her research as far as she is able to. And then we revisit this shortly thereafter. In the meantime, I'm sorry you don't have access to your house. I think that we will try and do this in as timely a fashion as we can,
What I'd like to see
given
happen
given the
is-
gray areas.
Is, that this occur in a timely fashion, but moreover in a sensible.
A thoughtful fashion.
Yeah.
No, I think that's what we're shooting for.
Something that ends in a resolution,
I think we're all on that same,
but,
You know, I'm not.
but it resolves.
because we need to get it resolved for everybody. So, the meeting though, we'll meet up at probably not
Banks
pull
Road?
off the Pine Banks Road, I mean, unless we could maybe park in your drive, I don't
Yeah,
know.
you can come down on my driveway.
That might be
Okay.
a safer bet to do that instead of park on the road.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
It's the first driveway.
yeah,
The
we're on
first-
the White House.
Yep, first on the left, yep.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you.
And when will this be?
A week from
19th?
Friday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
July 19th, 1 o'clock.
Just,
That was the 19th?
19th.
just a quick question, I was curious, for class 3 roads, do you plow class 3 roads in the winter?
Yeah, that's all,
Snowplow?
basically the dirt roads,
So-
everything.
And I just,
Yeah.
because
I
it
mean-
seems then that
Pine-
if that
yeah,
part has
Tavern-
been implied, it's
Tavern Hill.
implied that it's not the town.
Well, that's the
responsibility.
difference. That's
Okay.
the level to which the
Yeah.
town maintains roads
Okay.
are class 3 road. I'm not sure, what class 2 road must be a paved road. Yeah. Westminster West, right, yeah, right. Right.
So,
Right. And we have miles and miles of class 3 roads.
right, but I guess that's what I'm thinking, is that if it's been filed by those people for all these years, it's implied that it
Right.
was a trail.
Right, exactly.
You know,
And there's a lot of sections of class 4 road at the end of class 3 roads, the section of Windmill Hill
Exactly.
that connects between
Yeah.
Westminster and the Putney end of it, Allen Road, down below us, there's 5-6 houses there, I mean,
But I think that's also what I'm bringing up as far as, what the process is.
we were
I mean,
talking about
if you,
before about the Bennett Road running between Holland Hill and Putney.
but if you have 8 residents that live on a trail that want to upgrade it, is there a process to do that?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
That's,
Right,
and
exactly.
The process
So
is,
that's what I think we need to know.
you
so.
bring the road up to grade, or an individual landowner can bring it up to grade.
And then the town takes it over
Well, and the other
if they
his neighbors
agree.
can agree
Right.
to pay that person to do that.
Or if there's a certain number of residences on a house, is it mandated?
Exactly. I don't know.
There's,
That it be
Right,
class 3 road?
right. So we need to find that stuff out.
Yeah. There's more questions than
right,
answers.
In the short
as far
run.
as,
Yeah, start someplace.
as far as the mandated issue with that, I would suggest that that you would not be allowed building permits or anything to build on a road that was, had to be brought up. In other words, that it was by statute to be brought to grade, class 3.
In which case, we may have, by issuing those permits, we may have, in fact,
Well,
Well, then it's happening throughout Vermont.
which it may well be doing, but if nobody's
there's a-
bringing it to,
I
but
mean,
if we've issued
I think-
3 building permits on a road that's a trail, then.
This is the information that's in the zoning folder for the properties on Meeting House. It was
And there's an
very
agreement.
clearly.
Right.
Well, it was,
It would be 5.
Permits, it's a flood
Right.
zone.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clearly laid out in their zoning that was a condition, that they bring it up, but the town had no responsibility,
Thank you. We'll see you next Friday.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
so,
so these houses were
Okay.
built after 55?
no, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so we'll see you next Friday. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Appreciate your time and, effort and energy that you put into it. And I've said these
We'll
things
see where it
offended
takes
anybody
us.
I haven't meant to.
No, I think you're okay.
And I apologize.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward. Use of class 4.
Anything else that you need to be here for? I mean, you're welcome to stay.
I don't think so, because we're just gonna talk about that fund balance, and I think I can do that.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Unless
See
you
ya.
wanna stay.
Just make them stay anyway, right?
It's only gonna be like 40 minutes till we're at that discussion, so.
Stay out of the
No,
rain.
it'll be that one.
See you, Brian. Thanks.
Did you want that or no?
Well,
You can have that copy.
just pointing out to just that particular sentence. Well, it says the use of a class 4 town highway or trail right of way for access to a lot, or to the lot in this case, but a lot must be approved by the Putney Board of Selectmen.
And it was.
Right.
Yeah, the Meeting House is a little bit more clearly
Right.
defined as to who's responsible.
Well,
for
because
the-
it's
Since
right.
we dismissed people who
Yeah.
were part of
Let's
the
not-
discussion, we
Let's-
should terminate the
I
discussion.
did give them a copy of that before they left.
Yeah. Okay, Wyndham County Humane Society contract, we just need, I mean,
I have no
seemed
problems.
fine to me.
They seem,
Yeah,
to
the
be
only-
the pe- they seem to be the people that
Yeah.
do the job well. I
The
mean,
only thing that I wanted to bring to your attention was they did talk about a yearly flat fee that she offers too.
Yeah.
And I called her today, and that would be about $1,300. We paid $622 last year for the impound fees. So
Which of course we could,
You
you
could
know,
go
next year
more,
it
yeah.
could go to 2,000, but if we,
what has it been? Is there any kind of broader
it's
historic
about that.
average?
Yeah, it's.
I mean, if
I don't
it's
think
a-
we've ever gone over
If,
the.
if it's a 10-year average running at $600 to $800,
Yeah.
why suddenly?
She said the only town that's taken her up on that is
If
Brattleboro.
we're wrong, we'll
and they
you
have
know.
a much, yeah.
If we're wrong, we'll have a lesson learned. But
So.
yeah,
unless we're expecting a
no, it could be an
heavy year
oddball.
of puppies, you know, or something. Where,
Well, we've had quite a few in the last.
well, given all the rain, we
All
could-
this rain, there's
who
a lot
knows
of
could
dogs
happen.
inside.
That's right, cats and dogs,
One walked into the bar. A dog walked
other
into the
aquatic,
bar.
all right.
So I just need, if you guys can approve that, I'll sign it and send it.
I will make a motion to accept the currently proposed Wyndham County Humane Society contract as presented. Or are we authorizing you to sign that? Is that the-
Sign it.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'cause I
And
need
for
to sign
Cynthia
it.
to sign it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Wyndham County Humane Society contract and have Cynthia sign it. If there is no further discussion, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Small and inspiring grant.
Huge $750 grant. This was the grant that I wrote for the pool.
Uh-huh.
I need to send the grant agreement in and you need to sign it, Josh.
Okay.
So just the approval of it. We're actually not going to do it this year because we're far into the season. We have 12 months to spend it.
We're not gonna do, okay.
So we'll be able to have time to plan an actual opening the pool party next year.
Sounds good.
So that's, because you need to sign
We
it.
have
and I think
12 months to spend it from when?
from when it's dispersed.
Which is when, do we know?
Well, probably a month after I send this in, so.
Oh, okay. So why don't I sign it now so you
Yeah.
have it? Does that
And
make
then
sense?
Anita needs to sign it.
And you don't, do you need a motion on
You might as
that?
well. That way Anita, when she goes to sign it, knows that it was approved by you guys to go ahead and take $750.
Make a motion that we authorize Cynthia to apply for the Vermont Community
No, we got
Foundation.
it.
Oh, okay, you already got the grant.
To
receive and expend the grant.
Splash into summer no, sorry, the Vermont Community
The Vermont
Foundation.
Community
Small.
Foundation grant, small and inspiring grant.
All right, second.
So you get it and get to spend it.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Vermont Community Foundation approval for the small and inspiring grant and to allow the town manager to spend it as desired. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Tell me there's a good reason we don't have a fan in here tonight.
Well, we talked about it, but
Is it too
now
loud?
there's,
Is it?
now there's room, now there's probably. We just want you to see how it feels in here during the day.
Trust
come
me,
on,
I
you
had
guys
I had a number of
close those doors,
opportunities
turn
to
the
I don't
AC
have
on.
AC. We
swelt
don't have AC
today
at all.
already.
Kathleen doesn't have AC.
Why don't you come and see how it is on my job site for the day?
No,
and then we'll
thank
talk.
you. I know, I
Hang
hear
siding
it.
on the south side of something.
It's, all right.
See the back of my neck?
Just the site where there's no place to hide from the sun, right? It
I
follows
told
you
Tom
around
if
the
he didn't
building.
give us one of his, I was gonna move the town hall down to his place.
That's,
He said, I'll be
There
right
you go.
back.
that's right. I'm surprised he didn't bring you, a 5 foot around. All right, I got a couple of
We're
big
talking
4 foot
about
around
it.
fans here.
Yeah,
We'll rearrange all the paperwork.
Okay. Pool lights. So
Did you guys have a chance to look
I
at this?
I looked some. I didn't. did I miss pricing, or, because you had said it was expensive. I didn't see the pricing, but I didn't
Well,
look
it was
at
in
it
the
that
link,
thoroughly.
but the base lights cost about $400 each light, and then you have to have an electrician come in. I don't know if it seemed expensive to me. I was thinking of like a motion light outside that you buy it.
So what exactly is the light, and
It looks to me, when I looked at the light, it looks like a street light, but it also has a motion sensor.
it's not solar?
It's LED.
It's LED, but
Yeah.
not solar.
I mean, it's an energy
Because they have
efficient.
some nice quality solar ones. That
Yeah.
Don't need them.
But they're expensive.
Yeah, but I'm
So-
thinking though, with the cost of this plus the installation by,
Next, we have to have an
Electrician.
electrician come.
you know, then you have no
Is it a
electricity. bills.
post?
We need to put it on a post. I was gonna find out from Green Mountain Power if we could use the post we took their light off of. But they might charge, I haven't found out, they may charge
Is there a wire still on that post, or is
I
it?
don't know. Daniel's looking into all of this and giving me an
Okay.
estimate with the electrician, but before I put a bill in front of you guys for, could be possibly 1,800. I don't know how much it's gonna cost for an electrician, but 2 lights is maybe not 1,800, maybe 1,200, I don't know.
Well, if it's $800, $400 a piece for.
And then
light,
$40 for each motion sensor part that goes with it. Wall bracket is about 40, external motion sensor was 60. I don't know, before I tell him, he was gonna use the energy fund money, because we do have money in there, but before I put a bill in front of you guys for over $1,000 for 2 lights at the pool, which are not gonna run, they're not gonna run all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if we
I
have to
don't know.
run a wire from the pool house out to a pole and up the pole, and, we're gonna have to, it's gonna have to be
And
buried in 18 inches, we're gonna
What is
have an
this like doing
excavator
first?
involved.
Well,
What does it
we,
mean?
the street light, we used to have a street light down there that
Lit
was in the parking lot,
Right,
yeah.
right, it was along the fence line.
we have
That's
no
separated.
light down there at night right now.
I see.
That light was removed during that whole removal
Renovation
process.
and, right?
So he's proposing we would put these on the poles, or that we would put this, I mean, is there any reason we couldn't just mount a flood on the side of the
Building.
pool building? Wouldn't that be the most
That's
practical?
what I was thinking.
What, I'll take a drive
Can-
down
okay.
afterwards and have a look and just see, and next time you're there, if you
Yeah.
want to take a peek at it.
I think there's a lot.
I think we could get just a different offer on this,
Okay.
you know?
I mean,
That's
we
kind
might,
of
we
where-
might want to invest
We
in a
may.
$400 LED, motion sensing light, but
Right, what do we
to
hang
do
it on?
excavating, to put it out to a pole and then,
He was going to look into, I told him to
could
get
get
me an
pretty pricey.
estimate on not just this, but the entire project with electrician and whatever else needs to be done, because really we should probably have another light on the other side of the pool. It would discourage people
Well,
from
that's-
breaking
in the pool area
Area.
itself. Yeah, no, that definitely
I
makes
don't know, I had it in my head, like, I drive into my neighborhood and a light comes on off of the corner of their house, so,
Right.
Just let the snapping turtles out of the box
yeah.
at night.
All right, well, I will push a little more.
Yeah, and I guess I
Sounds
would
like
say
we could-
having research. I mean, this doesn't have to be a specific type of light with a specific type of wattage, number of wattage or anything. Are we looking for more security, just so the light comes on? I mean, because there are much
And
less
safety.
expensive options.
Yeah,
And safety, yeah.
Safety,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But there are
damn
a lot
thing's gonna
less
be
expensive
clicking on and off
options
all
than-
night long.
Yeah, no, I know.
You know, there's a lot of
The
wildlife
solar
moves through
option
there.
you're talking about.
Well,
Yeah.
especially if there's
Yeah.
one on both sides. I mean, that's the other thing. Do we want one on both
You're gonna be
sides?
you're gonna be driving the neighbors crazy with the thing clicking on and off all night long. I
At the pool house?
well, sure. You get a deer walk under there or pass through there. There's a lot of
Yeah.
wildlife moving up and down through there.
It depends on how sensitive. You can set it so that it doesn't, so a squirrel doesn't. But I
deer?
mean, I don't think it affects. It's sort of in the hollow there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it affects many people. I don't know,
Yeah.
but we should look.
We
The
should
other thing, though,
look.
is, and I'd be amazed if he hasn't already researched this, a self-standing solar unit that would do the same thing.
Okay.
Why don't we look into that?
Okay, I will
Yeah.
keep working on it with him. I was, yeah. Okay.
Good. Just, string of ground solar lights, you know. that pop
Something
up
like
would be
that, yeah.
Low
No, but
impact, low impact.
But
light
we
up.
probably ought to look at the issue, I mean, on the other side, it's fenced in, so the chances of something setting it off are unlikely, but we should, for safety purposes, I think, have one on the pool side.
Yeah, safety purposes and
Motion
deterring
sense.
those
Exactly.
people to,
Yeah, so,
jump the fence and take a little midnight swim or
Yeah.
try to steal something. Yeah.
can we have a switch somewhere though, so that some of us know how to?
No. The camera will take care of that.
Cameras, of course.
Solar RFP.
So we have a lot of interest in the RFP. I'm expecting a large amount of people. I think it's the 15th is when we said that they would be due. I'm expecting a lot of them to come in. A lot of different ideas have come to me, a lot of questions. And I need some guidance on how we're gonna filter through these. Who's gonna filter through them? Are we don't have like a committee that is been designated to review these. Do we want to just do it at a select board meeting or have one night that's designated just for that? I don't know. I don't even know what to do. I mean, for all of our other bids, it's pretty straightforward. You open it and...
Is the group that put the RFP together not a reasonable group to ask to review them and at least weed out the obvious?
I think no, Nick Sider's probably one of them that might put one in.
Oh, yeah.
I think Daniel is probably in the business.
The object
Enough
of this
that it-
being that we would be able to participate in the purchase of a sufficient amount of power produced by this proposal to power town buildings, correct?
Not
I mean, isn't that
necessarily.
ultimately our...
I think that would be the ultimate
Well, I
goal,
mean,
but I think
while-
in the
while
meantime, it's to
encouraging
take a
its
step
develop-
in that direction.
Right, while encouraging its further solar development, or
Right.
whatever. But what I'm suggesting is what is our role beyond that, other than being, in effect, since we are not going to be doing this on a piece of town property,
Right.
which sort of we eliminated that process.
Right.
We got ourselves out of that part of it. We're not going to fund this. We're going to be a participant in the funding of it because we're purchasing power or leasing or buying into it.
Yeah,
The assumption being that there will be other people buying into
which I'm
this.
not sure would be the case.
So again,
Yeah.
my question is, other than our general support for this, what role are we playing? We're not giving a piece of property.
No, but it would be whether we sign
A contract.
a contract with somebody to purchase power.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to make that clear. That is, but that's all I see as our role in that
Well, I think
so
that,
far.
I think what I'm
So far.
struggling with is I have several of them that are saying, I'd really like to go and present because we have a couple ways we could do it. And we'd like to talk to your group is what I'm hearing.
But
from
maybe
people.
is if we clarify to the presenters what our goal, what we hope to achieve by doing this,
Which should have been clear from the
which is-
RFP. I'm
which
not
is
sure
support,
there
which
was.
is
wasn't.
support
Yeah.
of solar development and the intention to buy or lease depending upon the proposals.
I think that's what we're saying though, is that the RFP that went out was vague enough
So that
there
there's
can be.
16 different ways
Yes.
of doing it.
So, I
And
mean, it's
so-
up to these people to sell us
Right, so is that
we're
the
not.
thing, is that we get them and then we call them in and talk to each one of them?
I guess we really want to just see what they've come up with, and I mean, either we or some committee we select
Right.
sorts through them and says, here's your best three choices.
I mean, we've set a deadline for receiving those by the 15th.
Yeah.
Do we then have a deadline on answering? I mean, I know we would want to do it in a reasonable time,
Yeah, I
but
don't think there was, I'd have to look again,
When
but I
you say
don't.
you're expecting many, are we talking 10, 5, 25?
Not 25.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
But-
Um,
somewhere
maybe
between
from-
five-
maybe a
Maybe
dozen.
between 5 and 10,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I would say that's a reasonable guess. Yeah.
well, why don't we see what comes in and then decide
Okay.
how to manage it? I mean, again, it may be as simple. We may be able to weed 5 of them out easily
I
for,
may-
for
Or at
any
least,
given
there
reason.
may be, 3 of the 10 are virtually the same. So
Right.
that demands a closer look at the
Yeah.
merits of But as long as, you know, we're clarified with what,
I mean, I don't
We're
mind
buying.
looking through them, and it may be totally clear to me when I see it what they're saying, but my guess is, with my limited experience with these types of things, I might be like, well, I have no idea what to talk about.
Well, I
but-
wonder whether there's anybody on either the energy committee or the solar RFP committee that could be a reasonably non-biased assistant in
Yeah.
that process. I don't know.
I can reach out to the, I mean,
See-
Nick can't, and
Right, Daniel probably
Daniel
can't.
probably can't.
And who were the others? Do you know?
Is Josh Corson on that committee?
No,
Because he's got solar training,
Knowledge.
even though he doesn't do it anymore.
yeah.
And he'd probably be
He lives up
willing.
in
Was it
Holland.
Mark
Nice guy.
Simon? Was that one of them? Mark? Why does that name sound familiar? I don't know. Baker.
Mark Baker, yeah.
Um,
I don't know what he does. Yeah, Josh is not a Putney resident, but
Is he not?
but no, I think he's a Dummerston or Brookline. Right. I mean that, you know, the most basic question is probably a financial question, and then beyond
I'll
that,
reach out to Mark and see if he wants to
if
come
he's
in,
willing
and
and
him and
able.
I can
Sounds
kind of
good.
sift through them, and then at the next
Yeah.
meeting we'll. Okay.
right, I mean, you know, our end, we have a fairly
And
clear
Josh.
goal
I
of
don't
how
think-
much
I think he's right
power it
there.
is we
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
buy on an annual basis.
I think
And
he might be right. Maybe he is.
So it's really just who offers us the best deal on
or is he in Brooklyn?
over a period of time,
Yeah.
or ad infinitum.
It's
if
a
it
very
goes.
probably
creative group
Brookline.
of kind of
He's right.
bidders.
I know. Yeah, he's right in there. I just don't know.
Maybe they'll
Right.
come in more similar than
Right,
I think,
right.
only because I've had so many pieces calling me. Like a manufacturer saw it, and they're trying to call somebody to see if they can be a part of it. So it
Yeah,
might be
no,
I'm
and we
feeling
don't,
like
you know,
there's
Right.
and we don't necessarily want to interview
Right.
8 people.
No.
When I mean, I think if we could weed it
If they're
down
very
to
similar
3,
to, right, yeah, that's
then
almost
that
what
might
I'm
make sense.
suggesting
Okay.
that we,
I'll get in touch with Mark and
Sounds
see
good.
that we probably can review those.
And Josh, even though he's not a Putney resident, probably would be willing if we needed his, you know.
Just somebody, right,
Yeah.
who say, look, that's a better deal than this.
Alice Mays gave me the name of a couple people too that she
Well, I
knows
was going
is
to say
really-
Alice Mays too.
Yeah.
Like she
Yeah, so
she would
she-
probably be willing
yeah.
and reasonably able to look at that. Okay. Tax rate, is that what's next? I'm missing my agenda here. There we go.
This is the hot topic. Everybody wants to know what
Sure.
the tax rate's gonna be.
And you have the piece of paper that
I know.
I
and
always ask for from Anita, and she.
The plain Jane explanation.
No,
Well-
comparable from last year, just a quick reference, so.
Here, I didn't make a copy. I don't know why. I forgot.
Why is this in here?
No, that's not what it. Those are for the next section.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think
The education rates actually went down
Yeah,
by quite a bit.
municipal rate, I mean, that's not too bad
I can make
considering.
a copy of that for you so you don't have to write on that.
Oh, it's all right, it'll be on here and then I can just reference. reference to last year's, just the.
I'll give you a copy of this when.
And
Do I have
we're,
a second? Not really.
so what does that work out to as a percentage increase over the year? And did you flick that number through?
Percentage increase?
Yeah. You know, just, what's
I
the
didn't.
headline say?
I didn't figure the headline out yet. What is it? I don't know. I was only off by a little bit with our prediction, but
Just on the municipal,
Yeah,
it's
the municipal.
it's 5.
I don't
How
know,
does that
guys.
work?
I need a calculator for
Let's
everything
see,
I do.
0.056.
What was it last
It's
year?
only about 1%, isn't it? I think.
I don't know. I'm not gonna say it because I'm gonna get it wrong and I'm gonna look foolish.
No. So now when I got my calculator in front of me.
The overall tax rate went down a little bit. What,
Yeah.
a penny?
No, it's not too
Right.
bad. Not too bad in general. We're looking.
But yeah, I mean, it looks to me like it's a 1% increase.
Yeah,
in
no,
the tax
and I mean,
rate. I can't.
you're right.
but
And considering
roughly
our,
on our municipal rate.
you know, expenses at both the school and our, you know, our municipal budget was up this year. It's not bad at all. Very good.
I did
Good
try
job.
to look at the
job,
education
Cynthia.
worksheet and figure
Yeah,
out how it
yeah.
went down, but
It's
Yeah, good luck.
it's complicated,
I
shall
know.
we say?
I gave it to Anita and said, if you figure this out, you let me know.
All right, it's
The sheriff contract, that ended up being 32,000
Yep, I see
instead
that.
of the 40 that was on the,
right.
Yeah.
That on our
Yep.
budget presentation.
because the contract
is-
ended up being 52,000.
Oh, cool.
So that was a little bit of a savings.
What is the other revenue? That's
All of the other zoning applications,
Dog
state
licenses.
aid to highways, dog licenses, all that
Okay.
kind of stuff,
All
yeah.
manner of sale of surplus.
Yep.
Well, I will make a motion that we accept the 2013 tax rate as presented, and I'm just going to let you, Laura,
Okay.
fill in the appropriate numbers.
We can discuss
From
it more
our
if you want to move
worksheet.
in second, and then we can discuss it a little bit more.
Well, so that
Yep.
there exists the motion to pass it, and we can
Yeah.
certainly.
Steve, second,
Yep.
second,
I second it.
and then you had a question.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping my head around all this.
Yeah,
a
that's
little bit
fine.
Yep.
more, Yeah.
Yeah,
So, what is it? So total, I guess I'm trying to figure, are we talking that the total tax rate is going down?
it is.
Yeah.
It is a
Okay,
little
this-
slight bit,
yeah.
right.
After all the stuff in the paper I've seen about,
I know.
this is why I
Right.
just want to make sure I'm understanding.
And remember
this.
that, that tax rate is on the homestead tax rate, which is, you know, a house and 2 acres.
Right.
And then, of course, you know, the other stuff is taxed at,
Non-resident.
well, depending if you're a resident or non-resident, the other property would be that, but the
Okay.
fundamental rate.
Yeah.
But if you look at this is an increase of
Yes, our
what
munis-
appears to be about 1%.
Right, our municipal rate, which reflects our budget, was up 4% this year. Or was it 8? It was more closer to actually 8%.
More,
Yeah,
yeah, 7 or 8,
Seven,
something like
between
that.
7 and 8%.
So that covers that increase. So that would be the start of the headline, would be Putney approves increasing municipal rate by
7%.
ballpark,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
no,
right.
not for the rate.
that-
Increasing
right.
budget by 7%, which translates to a 1% increase in
And
your
our
tax rate.
education
something like
rates
that.
are established by the state, and
I was as shocked as you are looking
Yeah,
shocked.
just, yeah, kind of.
Because I even then went to the state website, the education website again, and
To
checked
double check.
this year's and last year's to make sure that I wasn't, because I had not heard of anywhere that the education tax rates had gone down.
And where?
Actually-
what is the scoop?
I don't know.
I mean, is it-
I was looking today, and I don't. That's why I said I printed the worksheets and the calculations.
Partially
and,
enrollment.
Right. No, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm just I mean, is that it can't be unique to Putney, but it's
it may not be unique to Putney. I don't
right,
know.
but
But
it's not widespread, presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a
I know
state,
the-
that's
the
We
high-
get it. Yeah, we
The
actually
high school
get.
number's way down. I mean,
This is their calculation sheet. If you just want something to
Go
read
see to it.
in your spare time, but this is what we get from the state that tells us what those rates are.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right.
So we just take it right from their sheet, and
And that's all there is to it.
I'm sure that's
We don't have to approve
2013,
that.
14?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
that's been removed from our control.
yeah. I may
Okay.
have something. I don't know exactly the whole computation, but does having the CLA increase this year, does that help us?
Yes.
Because it went up
Yes.
significantly.
Yes,
So that might be our common
CLA
level of appraisal.
is a multiplier in this whole process.
Last year it was.
Oh God, I've had Jim Kane sit there and explain this to me over and over and over again,
The
and
common level of
and I
appraisal.
nod my head.
The common level of appraisal last year was 90.5%. This
And
year
we're
it's
up to-
98.
right.
Yeah. So
Which basically what that tries to do is level the playing field as to the value of real estate in Putney versus real estate in
Yeah,
other
so-
areas
Right.
of the state.
Right. And that's the primary motive for a reevaluation is to keep the CLA number higher, and it can get dangerously low. At one before the last, we were down to something like 76 at
Oh, was
the
it that?
lowest point or something like that. Right.
So that-
78.
Right. It was in
that
the
seemed
70s.
to have
I was thinking
that
80
multiplier
something,
maybe is what I don't know.
And this is all clear
Yes.
as
Yes.
day to me, but for Steve's benefit, can you explain the relationship
Watch his
between
No, I
grow.
want to see you do it.
That's the other question.
the relationship between the municipal grand list and the amount to be raised by taxes?
Right.
So our
what do you want me
municipal, well, this number represents, and then we pay a,
Yes.
The entire budget we approved was 1.78.
Correct.
Okay, so you take away any other revenue, and you have to figure out how much
133 million.
other revenue do we need in order to pay our bills, which is going to be through property tax. So you take that number and divide it by our grand list value. So the higher your grand list, the lower your tax rate. So then, once you do that, that determines what your rate is. So you need
Our
to
municipal
charge
rate.
on $1,000 worth of, not 1,000. On your grand list, you have to charge 0.599 as our new tax rate in order to raise the amount of money we need to offset our budget. Is that what you wanted me to tell him?
yes, but our grand list is the total.
It's our total
Value.
value of property times 1%.
Okay, times one. That's the difference.
That's-
So if we, in fact, the total value of properties in Putney is 222.
2,226,930.63.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Times
Municipal grand
1%,
list
that
times
is.
1% is
Our
22,465, or whatever it is, whatever this number is.
No,
Yes,
that's
times.
It's
no, you're talking
222
Yes, right here.
million.
220. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. No, I'm not
220
talking about the local agreement.
All right.
The
$222
total
million
value
worth
of
value
property in the town of Putney, the grand list represents 1% of the total value of property in Putney. So the total value of property is 222 million.
Excuse me, I don't know.
And then we have the multiplier in order to raise what we need to raise.
Right.
So, and the reason we have the grand list represented here and the multiplier is just simplification. I mean, why don't we do that at 100% and just because it would add so many zeros to the multiplier?
Yes, I don't know why
Is
they-
there, I don't know what the logic, because our grand list, I just don't understand why the grand list is only 1% of the actual value when the grand list would be the actual value. Oh, okay. That's the one that I wondered, but now that it's completely clear to me.
That made it clear, didn't
Yeah,
it?
and then the local agreement, my understanding is that is to support primarily, this is what we voted on a year ago, this is to support primarily veterans' benefits, is that
Well,
correct?
that's part of it.
It
Yeah.
supports and replaces the taxes that aren't raised by non-tax exempt properties. You know.
So there are certain properties that have been
community
voted
center.
tax exempt for municipal taxes, but they are not tax exempt for education.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah,
we
that's
have to raise
Raise a
that
certain amount.
amount of money that in order to pay into that yeah, they're not exempt from, so it's called a local agreement rate.
And then, but there's also a portion
There's a
of that
portion
that's
that goes to, right.
because veterans are
The first 10, you can,
exempt from X amount,
a town
right?
can vote to exempt up
Which
to
we did.
40,000.
Which we
I
did.
believe it was 45 in Putney. It varied from time. It
I
varies
think,
from time to time.
the
But I remember it
legally you
was-
could vote up to 40, and the first 10 is exempt from education taxes.
Okay.
Anything
Right.
above that 10, you have
Right.
to raise the education.
Right, because we recently.
So that's part of that too. We
Yeah.
did
We
that
recently
recently
raised
because
that number
it hadn't been raised in quite a
For
while.
a number of decades, right.
That's clear as mud too, huh, Steve?
Oh yeah.
Got
Yeah,
that?
but
There's
that's
a
like,
test on it later.
like Putney School doesn't pay.
That's different.
Oh,
That's different because that's not a voted exemption. These are the voted exemptions,
that
like
during the
That's
meeting, we
a-
have
Yes.
that little, yeah.
there
Okay.
are some that are
Historical
exempt
Society.
from all taxes.
Right, that's
Okay.
education or religious institutions are
Okay, okay.
tax exempt or
Yeah.
by statute. So
Okay.
we approach them for money in different ways.
It'll stay inside my head until I probably walk
That's
out the
fine.
door. and
If
then
you
I'll-
learn it in one
I'm
sit-down session, then you should set the tax rate
That's
next
right.
year.
The oppressing facts of it, right, remain. They're there for you to reference at any time.
And this represents the total school budget here, right?
It represents the total taxes we're going to raise for education. It not necessarily equals
Okay,
the school
right,
budget.
but approximately, yeah.
Well, I mean,
It's-
there
yeah,
should be
yeah.
quite a bit of other
It's-
revenue that they get from somewhere else, but.
Right. Then each of their budgets have other revenue sources which are not part of this.
Okay, yeah,
Right,
that makes
right,
sense.
right.
Yeah.
Like we do in the municipal.
Right,
budget.
right. But that's what that is there to cover.
Right, that
to
is
cover
right.
the education
By
portion.
taxation,
Right.
we are liable for.
And it may seem strange to you, but we have a discussion similar to this pretty much every year. So.
So don't feel bad about parking this in the back of your mind.
Or
and
at least
saying,
I have a discussion.
put that on the
like this pretty
checklist and
much
say
every year.
done.
Excuse me, do you guys wanna see what the list is of tax exempt parcels and municipal contracts on 411?
Not right this second.
I'm
I
not
think
sure
we're.
we need to.
I don't think we're.
I'll
Thank you,
answer
though.
it afterwards, just out of curiosity.
Okay.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to approve the 2013 tax rate at 0.599 with a local agreement tax. We have to approve the local
Yeah.
agreement also, right? Yeah, with a local agreement tax rate of 0.0101 in order to raise a total of, let's see, does that number already,
It's
does
the-
that have that included in there?
No,
No.
it's the 133.
You could do them separate to raise for municipal one.
For municipal,
yeah.
$1,333,951.24, and for the local agreement, the amount of which higher the
22,400.
top one, 22,465 and 59 cents. I actually did
Yep.
I did that wrong.
Yeah,
But-
because we're going to raise
It
the,
should be the top one, yes,
Yeah,
sorry,
22,
check the
right.
numbers before you put that.
Amount to be raised by taxes,
yeah.
Yeah,
22,465.59.
I gave you this number and I should have given you that number.
Right,
She can have this copy too.
and the amount to be raised by taxes.
So, just for our viewing audience, the amount to be raised by taxes, for the general budget is $1,333,401.
For municipal rate. You
For the
might wanna
municipal
add
rate,
the
yeah.
educational amount to be
Yeah.
raised as well, which is,
We don't have to approve,
oh, no, but
we don't-
if you're announcing it to the public.
Right, right, right.
You might wanna let them know
and
that
then
we're
right, the homestead
the
and
taxes didn't go down to
non-residential tax rate.
1.3
Yeah.
million, as opposed to the 5.7 million that are really.
Do you need something? Do you,
That's an interesting number. You know, it
Did you
used
need
to be
her to
about
come in?
2 to
No,
1,
no, we were
the
just talking
education
about
rate
the tax
to
rate, that's all.
the municipal, and I remember it going up to, 2.5
Yeah.
times that, and it's now up to almost 3%, 3 times as much. Which goes-
Yeah, heavy 2.5, 2.6, something like that. Okay, so, all in favor of approving that tax rate, signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Aye,
death and taxes brought to you.
there we go.
there we go. Let's fill it up.
Okay,
I have nothing under 4. I think I've said enough about stuff.
we've
Oh,
heard
come on,
enough from
spit it out.
I don't have anything.
Let it go.
Do you need this?
Yeah, I better because that's gonna be what Howard asked me on the phone tomorrow.
Okay, so preliminary year-end report, is that,
Well, I did close the books. I didn't print a report for you because there's still so much that I need to do. But I wanted to just let you know, as of today, it looks like our fund balance at June 30th is going to be around $100,000, which is good news.
this has nothing to do with what
No,
you're talking
no,
about?
that's the
Okay.
next, I didn't print anything with this, but I just,
Okay.
that's very preliminary, because there's still a lot
Sure.
of,
Sure.
work to be done, but,
All that stuff.
And that doesn't, at this stage, represent a surplus per se, but, so, even with the work that has to be done, you think that's
oh
about
yeah,
where
we're
it's
gonna
gonna
have a
end up?
surplus.
Okay,
I mean, especially the deferred taxes, that's gonna add to our
because that
surplus,
came in
because that
more
came down.
significantly
Yeah.
than we thought it was going to. Okay,
So, that
Good.
kinda leads into the next 2 things that we're
But we're still closing in the black a little bit.
yeah,
That's always
that was good.
positive, and
You know, unless I find some glaring thing that, all of a sudden, you never know.
it also means if we have a giant surplus that we're, other than barring some piece of good fortune, that we're doing something wrong
Some of
that
our
way
revenue
as well.
came in over budget, so that was good.
Right.
The work on the phase 2 part of the sidewalk from here to Landmark, RSG was hired, Landmark paid for half of that contract. I couldn't find in any of the discussions where we were gonna come up with the money to pay for the other half.
we
So-
talked about it, I think we agreed that we would come up with it.
Okay,
All right.
well, I did, I moved it
Right.
from the capital
In
budget.
effect, Peter and
I think
Paul
that's
did,
all
right.
it was to it.
As it were.
Yeah.
Right.
So I did move just to close out that fund to make sure that there wasn't a deficit in that fund. When I closed, I did move money from the capital fund into the sidewalk fund to cover it was $11,823. Now, we can keep it that way, or once I end up closing, if we want to use some of the surplus from the general fund, we could do that too, once we really see what our
Surplus.
surplus is. I mean, I don't know,
Is it a valid use of our capital funding? I mean, you know,
Seems like a capital
it
type
certainly
project.
does.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
and what benefit are we gaining by, I mean, this sounds, you know, sort of accounting shuffling. I mean,
It really is.
Yeah, right. What, you know, what do you feel most comfortable
Yeah,
with?
which would you rather do?
I mean, I feel comfortable with the capital fund move, and
Yeah.
then if during the budget season this year, we do have a surplus, that maybe we move a little bit
Add
more
some of
back to
that into
capital
Sure,
than
that
what
we
did
can
this
look
year.
at that figure
Yeah.
and say, okay, we put this.
But I
in.
wanted to give the option, since I
Okay.
already did it,
Sure.
but I should probably have a motion to be able to do that.
So moved.
Okay.
Whatever you just said.
Move 11,823.70 from capital
823
to sidewalk fund.
Capital to
Okay.
sidewalk fund, and we'll review this upon
Budget at
budget.
budget time.
It's been
And
moved-
just,
Second, yeah,
It's been moved and seconded to transfer the amount of whatever Cynthia said, 11,000 such and such, such and such. Oh yeah, 823.70 from the capital fund to the sidewalk
phase two,
Fund.
yeah.
phase 2 fund. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 And just so you know, at the end of where we'll be in the capital reserve in this fiscal year, after we pay for the truck, which ended up being 40,000 something instead of 45. And the current year transfer will end up at about 63,000 in the capital. So, you know, I would probably suggest during budget time we move a little bit more into
back in
capital,
there.
then start building that back up again.
That's very good news.
But there's money.
How did
there,
that
so-
end up costing us that much less? Was that
Just what it
that,
came
that
in.
that difference between Springfield and
No, they
blah, blah,
all
blah,
came
blah.
in, you know, it just
I
came
thought
in
it
a little
was-
less than
right.
what we had thought during budget season.
Springfield and Automall.
That always happens when I buy a vehicle too.
Yeah, me too.
I budget X amount and it's always a little less.
Yeah, me too.
I've blown the hell out of my budget a few times on
Yeah,
vehicles.
right.
Yeah.
The fund balance reserve, Brian is asking that we reserve $15,000 from the highway budget this year because we were not able to purchase gravel because the gravel pit just opened.
Right.
So they didn't move any gravel from anywhere else in the spring like they normally do, because they were kind of waiting, both Dummerston and us were kind of waiting, thinking that that was gonna be available before year end. So we ended up
Oh, I
about,
see.
yeah, we ended up about, you know.
Material reserve.
Material was about, the overall budget for the highway ended up being at a surplus of 25,000. So, and that was just between a wage savings and some other things, and then,
So he'd like to take
reserve
15 of that.
yeah, so that he can purchase the gravel that he normally would have purchased in this year that just ended.
just out of curiosity, you know, considering all of the rain and potentially long term like that, I mean, would it be prudent to reserve even more if that's at all possible? I mean,
Well, remember, we do have the new gravel pit will be coming online.
It-
So,
Yeah, they're hauling right now.
right,
Yeah.
so we're
They are
we're not in the position that we were
okay.
in with this. Now it's a matter of, I mean, it's still gonna cost us for that gravel, it still costs us, but it's not.
And I think that probably sort of more pertinent to what you're saying is going to be for Brian to project an increase in use of the material annually. You know, I mean, we do that just
Generally.
sort of how much we think we're going to use, but you know, if we're on a trend of having huge washouts every year, which we seem to be doing, then I think he will be able to hopefully reasonably guesstimate.
As long as we have dirt roads, we're going to have washouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, although they certainly seem to be washing out
And
more than they
there's-
used to.
Right,
So,
there've been some, right.
and if I think that's just a matter of staying ahead of the curve as far as the general budget or the highway budget is concerned. So, but as far as this is concerned, this
Bigger
is sort of
culverts,
to make
deeper
up
ditches.
for.
Yeah, and that's really the leftover in
For loss.
materials that we
Right.
didn't spend, so.
Motion?
So, yeah.
Did you move it?
I'm moving $15,000, and that is going to Where is it going from to?
It's gonna be a reserve.
A reserve
Part of the fund balance, it'll be a fund balance reserve to be,
fund balance. I'm moving that we create a fund balance reserve of 15,000 or
Yeah.
$15,000 from the fund balance
for highway
for
material.
highway materials.
All right, I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to do a highway material reserve in the amount of 15,000. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
It's probably just enough dirt to do all manner of things.
This is small print, right?
To fix the first 100 feet of a certain washed out road.
My driveway needs work.
You look like you're doing all right, but
Well, this last
You
couple,
could use
this
more.
last week,
Mm.
we got nailed, and I was
Bummer.
actually just gonna ask the town if they'd take
I was
care
gonna
of
say,
it.
Yeah.
how's Tavern Hill look after? Boy, the rain
not
just
that
late
bad.
this afternoon was quite a.
It was-
Yeah. Pounded. No, Tavern Hill has held up.
Yeah, Holland Hill
Reasonably.
is so far.
Here's-
That's quite the tree that came down there at the corner. That was
Yeah.
that
This
was
is a note,
quite a blast the
renewal.
other night.
note that needs to be signed that I
right.
didn't really know about.
Make that look a little bit like the signature.
Oh, we got a lot. Okay, that's yours on
Yeah, there's the sign, oh no, I was gonna say, there's the signing for that. We need money.
That goes with.
That,
Was this just on its own?
That was on its
I don't
own.
know what all this
It
is.
was on its own with this information.
Oh, this whole folder goes with that one.
Page
I
2,
guess.
page 1.
Is there anything else below this?
Let's see.
He did ones we signed the other day, right?
Is
I
that the
think
end?
that
you guys
warrant
did,
goes
I
with this
didn't.
pile of bills.
That warrant, right,
Sign that.
was in
Yeah,
that, and then
here, that warrant goes
These
in
are all
that.
set. In this, the one that we,
This
that
goes with
one
that.
goes with that, yeah.
Okay, now let's go further. Here's more.
There was one that was signed by two of you. but-
Yeah,
Yes.
that,
Okay,
that
that
already
one.
went through. Oh, great, somebody tried to hide it.
Doesn't matter which order.
No.
Okay. This looks like it's gonna get us.
And that, Steve, is just one of those renewal notes that every year they do this.
I think we did this, what, about a month and a half ago. right?
Yeah.
This one,
They just, whenever they come up, we do them. So it just depends on when we borrowed the money, that we have to renew it.
okay. One more in that one. Yeah, this is a long list of these.
So we should be.
Right,
all
so I
good
was gonna
to
say,
discuss.
this must be the end of the month, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
End of the
we're good.
month, and then that first
End of
warrant
the
to
year.
try to get all the bills paid that we should have paid for July 1st, and,
Looks like the end of
yeah. Newspaper article.
Okay, that's yours.
Oh, we should have this tax rate thing in there. That fan doing it for you?
Well, it definitely is. It is helping.
I'm assuming these are our pool people,
Pool people.
Brianna and
Yes.
Casey? Okay.
Swimming lessons started Monday.
And
It's fun to go up there and watch those kids in that pool.
That's it.
She's doing a great job with them.
Kids don't know how lucky they got at learning to swim in a semi-warm pool.
It's amazingly warm. Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Is it?
The other day, yeah.
swimming lessons began when I was a kid in Massachusetts. We began right after school got out. It was about the 20th of June, and the water in Cohasset was be about 52 degrees at 8:30 in the morning.
And it might be raining. Get in. You'll warm up.
We all learned, right?
You learned to swim
The
fast when it's
the
like
minnows.
that.
Well, and of course, once you got in the water, you never got out.
Right.
Right, you were in all day.
No. Okay.
The only, unless you have something else under, the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the bike and head grant. I'm assuming you all saw that email that we are not going to apply for it. Okay. Sorry. I totally missed that mandatory meeting. That yeah.
Oh,
And I
wow.
tried every way I could think of to get. I tried.
Didn't we talk about whether it?
We did in the last grant.
Right.
And it was not mandatory at that one. The transportation alternatives grant was not. So we will keep our eye out for the transportation alternatives grant in the fall and try for that one.
And do the bike fed again next year, assuming it's funded.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Should this come up now, or should that be warned for next time?
No, if you have your business, I think.
Advice about Cemetery Path Road in Mount Pleasant.
Because of all the rain, Mount Pleasant, the road that goes around through Mount Pleasant, it isn't really, it doesn't need to be a road, ever.
Right.
Really, because it isn't traveled all that much. It's only traveled when people come to mourn or when there's a cemetery,
Right.
you know, when
Function.
when there's a burial taking place. But the problem is that with all the rains, that we'll call it a road, but it's really some kind of path.
Sure. It's the pathway.
Right, has gotten so bad. Now, some of the burial plots are right up against that. So what I'm concerned about
Is
Dysentery.
bones
Right.
sticking out of the.
Well-
Right, yes.
I mean, they are down 6 feet, but some of the ruts, like I was just up there, it's one of the reasons I popped in here now instead of waiting until, regular business time, going to talk to Cynthia and
Right.
get put on there, is right now it's in really bad shape. So, the bigger question is what we're gonna do with that in general, It just needs to be a gravel path, but because it's like this, it's gonna need maintenance of some kind. It isn't even like a back road's dirt road. We really don't wanna encourage people
Right,
to
sure.
drive through there for anything. But I obviously
But you need
can't
to be
have
able to
various
Right.
sites
Right.
compromised
Right.
because of water.
Right.
And right now,
Well,
like I had somebody come in today,
I mean, we've
went
taken
to
over
see her
responsibility for this.
her husband's plot, and she was very upset about it, so I explained to her that we would do all that we could. The last time it rained a lot, her son and daughter-in-law went and took care of it themselves, which was very nice, and I thanked them a lot, and I emailed both of them and thanked them. But it's hard to say really what to do about it, so I'm here to ask your advice, really. I mean, we could certainly make it part of the maintenance up there, part of our maintenance agreement and contract with whoever mows there, that they install, or that they keep it so that there are no ruts that go down lower than 2 feet, and then we'd have to come up with a price, but that would be part of our annual contract with whoever mows there. But right now, I'm in a situation where
Now, we talked about this a little bit before, but that was sort of a different thing. That was whether to upgrade it, that
Well-
first part of it overall, or is this really the same
I
question?
don't know if it's the exact same thing, but I did talk to Brian about it recently, and he went out and looked at it. Maybe not since the other rains, but
Yeah,
he said it's not just an easy patch
It's
fix,
not a patch, right?
in that it would
Though a
be,
patch would at least suffice to allow access
Yeah.
until we can
figure something
Figure
out.
I
a
mean,
plan.
maybe you should ask him to go out again,
I would
given the heavy rain, and see.
suggest that maybe the cemetery form a capital fund. Start building a capital fund with that for that.
Yeah, well,
I had suggested when it came up before that to get somebody out there, a contractor out there,
Right,
to
and
give
get
an
a,
look
get
estimate.
a, get, let's get just a figure to
Yeah,
work
'cause
from.
Brian's concern was that it's not an easy fix. He could dump gravel in there,
Sure,
but it's just gonna
sure,
wash away
it's just
right
gonna wash
now.
away again.
And that they don't have time to do it. So
well,
that's all I know from him.
yeah, and a month or so ago when we had talked about this, it was not a big deal. You know what I mean? It was a low-lying area.
Right.
Sure, and
Actually,
it's just
that
gotten
I
more,
had-
it's, you get the hole starts and then it gets bigger as continuing bad weather comes along. And it's just gonna continue to get worse if we don't do anything.
Right, and I did go
And-
out there to see if there was, I mean, at this point, we can certainly get somebody there if Brian doesn't feel he has the time or the expertise to patch it. I could locate someone to get out there and patch it, or maybe you guys can, because it's only gonna get worse.
Right.
And so, I mean, the bigger thing is what are we gonna do in future years, but I don't want anything,
Right,
you know.
we don't want it to be an increasing problem.
right.
Do you want to ask Brian to go out again, or should we just get an outside contractor
Well, I
to
mean, I
look
can
at
ask
it?
him to go out again. It's then what do you want me to do with that information? I mean, I know what he's going to tell me.
Yeah.
I mean, because if it's
Right,
worse
right.
now than it was when
He's
I
gonna
went
wanna
out a
do
month
it,
ago.
he's going to wanna do it the correct way
Yeah.
and see it
Yeah.
effectively repaired. The question is, does the responsibility for us to fall upon us to repair it? And if it does, which I assume
Does it
it
make
does,
sense to have
does
the
it make
highway
sense to have the
department
highway
do it?
department do it
Right.
or
Yeah.
a private contractor? And
I'll have him go look at it again, and then I can.
I mean, just, if he says, well, it looks to me like there are two spots that have really gotten worse that we can dump some stuff in, then that might make
And
sense
when push
for
comes
the
to
moment,
shove, he's gonna
but-
say, if you need a patch of gravel in order to make it accessible now,
Well, that is.
then that we should probably have him just,
That's what
instead
I'm,
of when he
that's what
drives
And I'll
up,
tell
bring a
him
load
that
of gravel
if
with
he
him.
thinks he can just bring a load of gravel in to patch it up right now, then
I mean, as we all know from, in mud season, we'd rather have a pile of rocks in that mud pit than
Than more
wait
mud.
for it to be done right.
Right.
There's a point at which access becomes just that point. I mean, this takes us back to our earlier discussion, right? Well, it does. I mean, it's
rain.
see what he
So-
says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, long term, why wouldn't you want to just, make it so that it's drivable, but plant grass on it?
Well, it needs
because
to be
Grammy's old
gravel.
Cadillac can't make it to the gravesite, on a grassy
So-
knoll.
It's also the trucks that are bringing monuments can't drive on
Ah.
grass and mud.
Yeah,
Gravel is
chew it up.
fine, and as I said, the important part is to not make it a road, and I know that Brian
Right.
is
Right.
used to doing road.
Right, it's that happy medium to
Right,
right.
this is just.
Oh, I mean, Brian knows
better
what-
than
right.
Well,
he knows.
his
You're right.
concern is
He knows how to
putting
fix a muddy
material
road.
in there, and
That's just going to
This
that's
is
just
gonna-
going to go away.
wash
right.
That's his concern, and
Right.
without
Right.
doing some of the other
It's gonna
stuff,
wash down into the Wilson wetlands.
it's
then I'm
going
gonna
to
hear about
happen
that.
again. So he's like, I would rather go out there and do it right if I'm going to do it.
Right, but we
But-
don't want a road, but he knows
Yeah.
that. I
Right.
mean, I'm sure he has a reason.
Well, I guess,
But
that's
if
what
we
I
need
want to
an
qualify. I
immediate-
guess when I say grass, what I guess I meant was vegetation, but you can have a solid base, and there's erosion control mixes that you can put on top
Yes,
of that.
yes.
So that
Yes.
it helps eliminate the washout, but you can still
Right.
drive on it.
Yeah.
If people are driving on it only, what?
The problem-
3 to 4 times a year? Or
Well,
a
it's
lot more?
There's,
every time somebody gets buried, in
Yeah.
effect, you've got, generally speaking, some piece of equipment. They bring in the concrete vault or whatever, and
well, actually, we don't use
Okay.
vaults,
The-
but
Viking burial, and
there's 4 times a year it has to look smacking good.
Oh, I see.
Fourth
Okay.
of July, Memorial Day, stuff
Gotcha,
like that.
okay.
But it's really about people, who come to mourn, and then if, Rodney Bell, who digs our graves, has to get out there, or one of the monument companies comes and put in a monument.
Sure.
Right.
That's really
Yeah.
better, but it is something that's within our charge, because it's in, town.
it is.
Okay, well, we'll have Brian look at
It
it.
is now
See
our
from there.
responsibility, so
Okay,
therefore our expense
Yeah,
at some
thank
point,
you.
one way or another.
need an executive session for legal, but I would like to for a personnel issue,
Okay.
if you could make that motion.
I will make a motion to go into executive session at 7:40.
And we're probably not gonna,
No, there's no.
There's no
There will be no
resolution action
decision,
being
so-
taken on this executive session
Yep, second.
concerning a
Seconded.
personnel matter.
It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session at 7:40. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye, aye.
Aye.